Okay, so this is for Monday, October 25th. Prep sheet going over past suggestions. S&D did work out to be a great short. It just kept dropping and gave a nice little pop as is expected. The idea was if it pops above this resistance and then breaks under, you can see the wick was all selling. Like it popped up and then sold off immediately on a 5 minute. So that was a good short into nothingness. CKT didn't do the same thing. I got a signal on my little algo situation for covering finally, but I would imagine most people would cover the day before and not risk it until the next morning. And while there was a short suggestion later, it didn't break through any of the resistances, so it would not be a sufficient short entry in that one. Going forward, I'm looking at DSS, obviously the huge runner of the day. Interesting about it is that it's another super low flow pump. It has really massive sell-offs on these pops. It's done that before in the past. You had the insane April situation, then you had another one in May. And the nice thing about it, they also issue shares. So once they drop, they always drop a little lower. And kind of expecting the same situation now. The volume was, I think, the biggest. I think the volume was, the biggest ever, 120 million versus the previous one at 20 million. 3.8 million float, so crazy rotation. And it does have a price gap, the big price gap to fill, potentially all the way to here, but obviously it has a lot of stops on the way to getting that done. And the one time that it broke above everything, it sold off massively from $15 to $6. So I would expect the same situation. So I have all my inflection points noted on the bigger chart, and looking at the smaller one, you have a nice stair stepper. I don't have a signal to short yet, but looking at it myself, this is a longer trend line that I've marked on the daily. It broke above that, and so now the goal is, if it goes above this 7.8, doesn't break above 762 and breaks down below, this would be a short entry, and then an add when it goes below the VWAP, because all the volume was in this area as far as the interest volume. And then you can see how there's been volume pushing up the newly formed oversupply, and then the volume is not consistent anymore, the supply is still rising. So there's a huge 10-to-1 discrepancy of how many people are holding potentially a long position. If the price doesn't rise, it will crash. So that's what I look for in a short setup, and it's looking great. Of course, have to be wary. It's a low float, it could pop, but again, define risk. Even if it goes above 762, the point is I need to see it go below whatever resistance it breaks, and that's my entry with that resistance as the short. So if it goes 729, breaks short. If it goes back to 762, I'm exiting. If it goes above 762, then my risk is all the way up here. That's where I would expect the short squeeze to continue. And also, I don't think there's any chance it touches that. So DSS is the main watch. The next one is, of course, WWR. It's a gift that keeps on giving. This one ran for no reason at all. It just accumulated a lot of shorts since the last run. And so a little bit of volume pushed up, and people had to start covering. I think it's also a super low float, and it built up a 29% short. So that's entirely what's going on right now. But that also means, since it pushed up into the after hours, I would expect it to go more. I have, again, points of interest noted on the daily. namely the next one I'm looking at 616, and on the smaller time frame we're already looking at 513 as our next resistance. Ideally it goes above 513, and somewhere in this area it has a standard deviation top out, and maybe we start seeing the red sell-off situation again. Low volume. I don't think I would even wait for the break below 514. If it goes above 514, I would just start shorting as soon as it starts going down, even if it doesn't break this. And then when it breaks this, I'm adding here, and I'm adding 477, and then I'm adding on the WeVap. So those are the two main watches with most volume, and both of them are clear pumps. WWR is less risky, just need to wait out the short squeeze. And then the last one is GRIL. Kind of like a perfect short setup today actually. I got a suggestion of change early on the 5 minute. On the 3 minute I actually got it right here. But what this means is, if you get a suggestion that it's going to go down, at the very least you wait out until the trend is changing. Okay, so the trend is done go down and then it dies. So at 7 a.m. the volume didn't come in to sustain it. So you had options. You could short once it broke this trend and went below, using this previous suggestion of short, essentially saying that technically on a longer time frames it should start going down. So this was the idea: pop above resistance, drop below resistance, just like everything else. Short here, add on WeVap, add on the next resistance, and cover. I mean, this would be perfect. Cover into here, then short above resistance, cover here, and there's no more short because it never touches WeVap. But it could be a day 2 because it still popped up a decent amount, and it loves to do that on more than one occasion. So this could still double up. It's a low float. If the volume comes in there, they could push it again. Granted, the only thing is, of course, each time this happens, the overhead supply is greater, and this is somewhat recent. So, I mean, the volume was insane today. Most of overhead supply may have walked out. Like, clearly looking at this sell-off into the close, I mean, really throughout the whole day. And the selling's at 82%. So there's a good chance most of them are out. But any type of pop, ideally, it has to, for me, go at least above WeVap to make it interesting, and maybe it goes to 2.6, and either one of those breaks on the way down would be a short. It has also almost a 10-to-1 ratio of new overhead supply. So I think that's what I'm looking at. DSS, WWR, and GRIL. I don't see anything that I want to go long, and the market is showing some weakness, so generally focus on shorts is easier. I do have one more, ISIG, as a pop. Also 3 times the volume, and it really pushed people out, mainly because it was an after hours move, so people couldn't exit it the same way. So this could push. Of course, it's also a low float. But the only thing why I don't want to talk about it too much is it's risky. It doesn't have a stop. The stop was at 135, and you're essentially already there. So your risk reward is undefined. If this goes above here, it could go on forever. So you need a second top. Obviously, it's a watch for tomorrow, but better yet, safer will be the day after.